Today's video is all about the PowerBook, and it's also a little bit of a journey back in time because it was actually recorded back in 2023, specifically March, but I'm getting this done early so I can actually have it out by March. If you're wondering why specifically March, well, it's the month of Marchintosh. If you don't know what it is, I'll have this website linked down in the description below, but basically it's an excuse to get your old Macintosh out and just have fun with it. Use it, see what you can do with it. Obviously the iPhone 3GS is optional, you don't need to use an old iPhone. Basically it's just to get these old machines back up and running and just enjoy them. It's kind of like the PowerPC challenge, which I unfortunately missed out on because I just didn't have enough time to get into it. But that's exactly why I wanted to get a head start for Marchintosh. So I figured this would be a good time as any to get this footage out to you guys so you can actually enjoy it, because it's not like the information in the video is outdated. It's not like the PowerPC has gotten any updates since then. And the other reason why I'm saying that it was recorded a year ago is because there have been a lot of changes to the current setup from then and now, and this video actually predates the iTunes library setup. If you haven't seen that video before, I'll have it linked right up here. The hard drive that I was using with this PowerBook is now a core component of the iTunes setup, which is exactly why it's here and not in the setup. So hopefully you find today's video entertaining, or at the very least a bit informative. This was my first attempt at using Sorbet Leopard. There's an entire desk here and it's never enough space, but let's go ahead and begin anyways. macOS Snow Leopard was just over there, and now it's here. But in today's video, we are not going to be installing Snow Leopard on this MacBook here, because it's not a MacBook, it's a PowerBook. And if you know a thing or two about Macintosh models, you'll know that the last supported operating system to run on PowerPC hardware was macOS Leopard. Fortunately, there's been a lot of development in the vintage Macintosh community to bring more usability and life back into these machines. And Snow Leopard is obviously not supported, but Sorbet Leopard is basically the successor to normal Leopard, at least for PowerPC. Now, it's not exactly 100% a copy of Snow Leopard. However, there were a lot of improvements and features that were brought over from Snow Leopard into Sorbet Leopard. Now, Sorbet Leopard has been featured a lot of times on YouTube before, but what exactly are we going to be doing differently to make it more interesting? Well, we're going to be running the entire operating system off of the Seagate drive here. We'll see how well it runs, and I have used macOS Tiger on here before with the Macintosh before, so I don't see why it shouldn't work. Oh, and of course, we are using FireWire with this because FireWire is an amazing technology, and of course, this being the early 2000s, FireWire is going to help out a lot because, well, it just works. Now, the PowerBook is actually running off of battery power right now because it works, but I will go ahead and get the power adapter for this so that way we can do as much testing as we want. So as soon as we plug in our FireWire drive, we'll be able to see the actual image. Obviously, I have a very clean desktop. So there are the drives. I do have macOS Tiger on one partition, and then Untitled 2, which is a pretty good name, is what Sorbet Leopard is installed on. And before we actually transition over to Sorbet Leopard, I'm going to run Geekbench, Xbench, and OpenMark real quick just to see what the machine scores as it is right now. I'm not really going to count the hard drive and in general just file transfer speeds or anything like that because, well, it's not exactly an equal comparison, but regardless of that, we're still going to see how well it actually performs. And you know what, just because we can, we're going to take all of these, put it in there, instantly cleaner. We're going to start off with Geekbench, and we'll just see how well this actually works. So here we have the PowerBook G4, and in fact, we can do zoom action here. So we have a PowerBook G4, 15-inch, 1.33 gigahertz. There's our PowerPC processor, 768 megabytes of SD RAM, macOS 10.5.8. And I don't know how long this is going to take, but we're going to do a jump cut. And by the way, Sorbet Leopard is already downloaded and installed on the external hard drive, and I actually did it all on the PowerBook here. So I was able to download Sorbet Leopard with the PowerBook and I transferred it over with disk utility and basically just restored the partition, which was Untitled 2, with the DMG image of Sorbet Leopard. It took 44 minutes to transfer from the PowerBook directly into a restored copy onto the partition, but in the end, it worked, and well, with FireWire, it's just going to work. Even though I've had Geekbench, Xbench, and OpenMark installed on the PowerBook since forever, this is actually the first time that I'm actually trying it out. And, well, we got a 792 overall score. Now we also have a processor integer score, which has reached into the 1,000 range, which is pretty cool. And what we're going to do is, instead of looking at every single thing, we are going to save this and go ahead and close this. And next up, we're going to move on to Xbench. Now with Xbench, it can do basically everything, and I'm going to go ahead and leave everything checkmarked here, and at the end we can see the comparison between the disk testing speeds between the internal hard drive and the external FireWire drive, because I'm interested to see just how big of a change it is, or if it's actually relatively similar. Alright, so the final score here is 40.82. It looks alright. I haven't really used Xbench that much. It did relatively alright. The actual benchmark itself seemed to be pretty smooth, and we'll go ahead and save this as well. And OpenMark is more of a GPU test, so we'll be able to see how well this actually works, and it's basically just a spinning orb, and zooming in actually changes it quite a lot. So we'll go ahead and run the benchmark here, and what this basically does is it just makes more orbs on screen until the computer can't handle it. And the final score is 4,867. Now, I'm not sure how much this is going to change under Sorbet, but I guess that's why we're doing this, to see what happens. And who knows, maybe this will be a completely different score by the time we test it again, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. And also, that's pretty funny that OpenMark just makes the score a screenshot. At least we have that as well. So we'll go ahead and close out of that. And all that's left to do is boot into Untitled 2. So what we have to do is go into System Preferences, select our startup disk, and we're going to select 10.5.9. Classic macOS intro videos. Now, unfortunately, I'm going to have to mute that because of copyright, but we're running successfully off of FireWire on the hard drive, and we'll go ahead and continue. And then, of course, enter your Apple ID, which we're going to skip. I guess we'll just go ahead and name it PowerBook G4. Continue. And there it is. Thank you. Your Mac is set up. So we can do email with style. It's like we have a new Macintosh 10.5.9. Of course, the same system specs, because obviously there isn't any hardware change here. And we're able to do whatever we want, I guess. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually reconnect the Mighty Mouse, and it seems to have connected, so we can do mouse things. So what's the big fancy thing about Sorbet Leopard? Well, obviously we don't have Spotlight, because Spotlight indexes a lot of files, and that can slow down your system. It's done to help improve overall performance, and at the same time, you might be noticing with the dock here, we've got the Sorbet App Store. So it basically mimics what the normal Mac App Store looks like. And I'm pretty sure these actually just lead to a URL download. And in fact, we're going to install Interweb PowerPC. So it brings us to Macintosh Garden, and we'll just go ahead and download the correct one. In fact, what we're going to do is we're going to access the Leopard drive here. So what we're going to do, and in fact I probably just could have taken Interweb here, but it's installing anyways. Now we need, oh, and they're on the desktop, that's why they're not there. copy these over, as well as Xbench. Interweb PowerPC on stock Leopard is alright. It's not the fastest on the PowerBook, but hopefully it'll be a noticeable increase in performance. And we'll go ahead and close out of the App Store. Macintosh Garden. That is actually relatively quick, and typically I can't scroll this fast on normal Leopard, so far I am seeing a good improvement. Now YouTube really struggles in stock macOS, but I'm interested to see how well it'll work on here. It did actually load, but it seems like it's not exactly the fastest thing. But then again, it's YouTube on PowerPC, so I'm not expecting too much. YouTube certainly isn't the most ideal thing to use on here. This video here was actually edited entirely on this, so I guess the real test is to see if it can play its own video while it's streaming over Wi-Fi. Now, there's a lot of factors here that can affect playback. Obviously, the not exactly fast airport card in here could be a factor. And again, YouTube on a PowerPC architecture isn't exactly the most ideal thing to run. So it seems to have rendered a bit. It's at 360p. And the video itself, this one, is only 480p. So it's not like a lot of quality is being lost here.
Now, if you don't know what Marchintosh is, it's a thing that happens in, you guessed it, the month of March. PowerBook, as well as a Sony Handycam that is capturing this current footage.
Now, audio playback is really good, but the video side of things is more of like a slideshow. In fact, I actually just remembered that in the release notes, there was actually a newer version of Safari installed on here. I believe it was Safari 11. So let's go ahead and open that up real quick, because I imagine this would actually run relatively smoothly. And yeah, it has Safari 11. So, I mean, not exactly the most up-to-date thing nowadays, but considering that it's newer than what was on here before, that's pretty cool to see. That's pretty fast as well. So I can see it redirected to the mobile site, but if it does load, that'll be cool to see. The mobile site is actually really fast, and this is on Safari, and this is also with the actual interweb PowerPC still open.
Just this PowerBook, as well as a Sony Handycam that is capturing this current footage, and I'm also
Okay, this is actually insane, because I don't actually remember YouTube running this well on the PowerBook at all. So I had to type in m.youtube to actually go to the mobile site, but it has actually loaded. I am seeing a pretty big difference in speed compared to the desktop version, and let's see how well it actually plays this video again. So I'm not sure if it's just because it hasn't completely loaded in, which is probably why, but it seems like Safari actually played video better than interweb PowerPC. I mean, they are completely different versions of a web browser, and I'm assuming Safari is probably lighter even though it's a older version. I mean, it is actually still playing much better than it was before, so using the mobile version of YouTube certainly helps out a lot, because, well, it just doesn't have a lot of extra stuff to load in compared to the desktop site. So I ran the 3 benchmarks on Sorbet Leopard, and now it's time to see the final results. So starting off with Geekbench, here is the one for stock Leopard, and we have a overall score of 792. We have 798, so it actually went up by 6 points. So the processor integer performance score went up by 10. Floating point performance went up by 14. Overall CPU performance actually did increase. This is actually very cool to see. Now with Xbench, it'll be interesting to see the specifics in actual hard drive performance, because again, external drives. Our score went up from 40.82 to 42.53. So there is actually another boost in overall performance, which is very cool to see. CPU test went up a little bit. Nothing but improvements to see here. Now the real test though is to see if FireWire is actually faster than the IDE hard drive in this thing, and overall we scored a 27 31.77 on here, and this actually scored a 31.86. So even though something like uncached read went down from 65.09 to 35.88, there are actually improvements in write speeds, and that is actually unbelievable. Uncached read for random access went from 57.87 to 112.61. So that is basically double the performance than what this supplied. Now, it's not the most ideal setup because you're basically tethered to this one cable, and if this gets unplugged or damaged, then, well, I mean, you can't use it anymore because obviously it's linked to this thing and not the internal drive. But if this is your only option, say the hard drive in the PowerBook failed, and this is the only other alternative you have until you find some sort of replacement, this actually gets the job done. So that is also very cool to see. And I thought FireWire was going to be around the same, but I did not expect to see that much of an improvement. Okay, this is the last thing I was expecting to see, but OpenMark also went up by 151 points. So we went from 4867 into the 5000 range with 5018, which is actually crazy to see because, again, there are no physical changes to the actual hardware in here apart from the software and obviously installing it on an external drive, and it still went up. I know benchmarks aren't perfect exactly for real-world performance, but considering every single one of these tests here showed significant improvements, I'd say that Sorbet Leopard really does the job in trying to improve performance on PowerPC. And now time for the final test with Classic Cube, and this one just works. Okay, wow, that was incredibly fast. So initially it dips down when you first update it, but it's still working. And wow, that's impressive. You can even see in the leaves, which is something that would typically have to be disabled in order to increase performance, but that's awesome. And because this is on the older version, it's limited to how much it actually generates. So even with this increased view distance here, now obviously this is intended for lower end processors. This is very cool to see. I mean, we're still at basically 60 FPS. Now I'm probably not going to spend hours playing Minecraft on here. We got one more thing to try out. We're going to play some Quake on this because we can. Now obviously Quake is an older game and it runs on even lower end hardware. We're going to see how well this actually handles Quake because, well, I mean, it's got a lot of 3D graphics that we're going to have to render with our powerful PowerPC hardware. Just look at all those 3D graphics. And I guess we'll just do this. Absolutely buttery smooth. I mean, even magical reflection graphics here just working amazingly. Now the real question is if I'm any good at this. Last time I played was forever ago, so it's anyone's guess as to what'll happen. The fan is actually kicking in, but it's probably just because it's been doing computing things for quite a while now, so it doesn't really surprise me. And obviously it's an older game. You'd probably be able to play this on late 90s hardware anyways, but I mean, it's extremely smooth. Very cool to see this in action. And I mean, for games of this era, this machine can do everything without a problem. Because remember, at the time, this was not a cheap machine. And we actually unlocked some more things here. But you know what? I think that's going to end today's video. So in conclusion, yes, Sorbet Leopard is amazing. It's awesome. And the fact that it's even running off of this external Seagate drive here, off of FireWire, and it still provides better performance than the built-in hard drive with standard Leopard, it's certainly a worthwhile upgrade. Now, I'm not planning to switch over the main Leopard install in here to Sorbet, mainly because I've already got files and other things on it. But whatever the case may be, I do have it installed on here, and I can always use this with not just this PowerBook, but even other Macintosh models as well, because FireWire lets you do that. So overall, amazing to see this in action, and I can't wait to use it even more. If you enjoyed seeing what we saw today and just taking a look at overall improvements over FireWire, believe it or not, then consider leaving a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel if you want to see more content like this. This is certainly not the last time we're going to see this PowerBook in action, and well, there's still a lot of cool things we can do with this. If you want to see more stuff like that, then stay tuned. But that's it for now, and as always, thank you very much for watching.